The BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, foreign ministers convened in Cape Town, South Africa for 2 days to discuss the enlargement of the group and prepare for the 15th BRICS Summit to be held in Johannesburg from August the 22nd to 24. The BRICS Summit is set to go ahead in South Africa with ongoing discussions over the participation of Russian President Vladimir Putin expected to be finalized this week. With over 20 countries applying to join both formal and informal basis, the BRICS nations have positioned themselves as an alternative to Western geopolitical supremacy. Now, joining us live to discuss this, we have a lecturer of political and international relations, Thapelo Tselapedi. One welcome to you, Thapelo, and thanks for joining us on NC Continental Prime.
Thank you, and thank you to your viewers as well.
Now, Thapelo, we know the BRICS ministers' meeting is somewhat of a preamble to the main event, and it was held just over the weekend in South Africa. What are the issues that were discussed in the BRICS ministers' meeting? What was the agenda?
I mean, certainly, I think the big issue, the big highlight was around the number of countries that are interested in forming part of BRICS. I think, obviously, issues around criteria, around who then forms part of that. Two, I think it was also just a reaffirmation of the sort of attempts that BRICS wants to do with regards to international governance institutions, particularly United Nations Security Council, role of the G20, really, that was quite important, and those sort of things. And I think finally there's the issue of how then do you deal with the matter of President Putin of Russia. I think those were, the three things well, two things publicly that came out, but I think that final matter of dealing with Putin may have become a private matter within the BRICS foreign ministries. We then saw, obviously, the public statement that was made out, and I think it talks to these issues that I'm talking about. Okay.
Now, Thapelo, South Africa needs its BRICS, EU, and US partnerships. They're very important to South Africa. And also, South Africa has a very good historical relationship with Russia. So how does South Africa maintain this geopolitical balancing act with interest pulling from both sides? Yes.
Look, I think it's obviously quite clear that from an economic point of view, that quite a lot of trade relations are had with the EU, well, between the EU and South Africa. And that goes a long way back, given the colonial relations, particularly with the UK. And perhaps that's covered also with the United States, specifically the AGOA agreement that's in Southern Africa. Those relations are quite important, but of course, given what South Africa has been saying for quite a number of years, since the days of the non-alignment, going even further back than when Thabo Mbeki, then President Thabo Mbeki was the president of them around the late 1990s, issues around democratizing the international institutions. That sort of call goes way back again to Bandung 1950s, to non-alignment 1961. So it's not new. So I think the relations with EU and the US vis-a-vis the relations with Russia, it has to be maintained. I think in a sense, South Africa stands, or Pretoria stands, in between the East and West, and it has to navigate, I suspect, what would be sort of Western anxieties around this BRICS formation. What does BRICS represent, and the sort of states that they represent, particularly when we're looking at China and Russia, at least according to how sort of Western discourse has described those societies. Of course, when you look at India, Brazil, and South Africa, they're democratic societies. How the other two have been described are not so very democratic, and I think that's where the anxiety of the West lies. But that shouldn't be the case. But I think South Africa should be able to bring along the West in what will surely and is clearly being a multipolar society or multipolar international
order.
So, yeah.
Yes. Now, Thapelo, there are several countries, as you mentioned in your opening statement, that are trying to join BRICS despite Russia's reputation. What do you believe is the main attraction for these countries? What are they looking to gain from their membership of BRICS?
Look, I think the one thing I think that's quite important is that countries are able to, if needed, make loans at the BRICS Development Bank on the basis of their own currencies, local currencies. I mean, of course, the call for de-dollarization has been made since the BRICS 2011 summit. But even before that, there's been the problem, of course, the international monetary system, which has been premised on the dollar. And I think given the events post 2001 or 9/11 and the events of the 2008 credit crisis, I think that brought to a spotlight the problem of the United States dollar and how perhaps there must be multi-currency approach to how states trade. So I think that's one benefit, of course. And I think the other benefit for me is from a South-South perspective, it's easier for developing countries to be able to obviously trade on the basis of their needs and develop. You'd know that sort of North-South relations or North-South trade has been premised on very unequal relations, on unbalanced trade of balances rather. And I think South-South relations is a potential of ensuring that businesses, for example, from China to South Africa, from South Africa to Nigeria, are able to help each other. Okay.
Now, finally, Thapelo, like you mentioned earlier, President Putin's attendance is one of the most contentious issues and unresolved issues with this upcoming BRICS Summit in South Africa. The South African government is trying to walk a delicate line over his attendance. What's the best way to resolve this situation, and where are we at the moment with regards to his attendance?
Look, I think South Africa is obviously in a pickle. Legally, it will be obliged to arrest President Putin, but I think as a developing country, it's going to be very difficult for them to arrest a sitting president. So certainly one of the solutions to do this is to be able to insert an amendment in the Implementation Act of the ICC that would allow for them to at least apply for a waiver for the president to attend. But the other option, I think that's also been discussed that we hear privately, is that the attempts perhaps to shift the conference to China, given that China is not a signatory of the Rome Statute. So that's certainly a possibility, and given that also China and Russia are not signatories.
Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Thapelo Tselapedi, lecturer in international relations and politics. Thanks for your insights and contribution.
Not a problem. Take care.